Hey, everybody, it's Monday. We have a great discussion here today with Pete Bernard, master of
Ooh.
all things edge computing, one of the most knowledgeable experts in this space. Welcome, Pete. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks, Evan. Yes, I'm here in cold and rainy Bellevue, Washington.
Well, I'm sure
Thank
it's a bit warmer than Boston, but so we'll spend our quality time here inside and not outside today. But
Sounds good.
really, thanks for joining. I enjoy all of your content on social media. You're pretty prolific, and you always have amazing insights to share. So maybe introduce yourself and your biography and background, and whatever else. Give us some
Yeah,
insight into your body of work.
yeah, sounds good. Well, Pete Bernard. So I run a technology practice called edgecelsior.com. And it's kind of a combination industry analyst, content creation, strategy consulting firm. Been doing that for less than a year. I spent about 18 years at Microsoft.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, running lots of different, build a lot of products, ship a lot of products. We can certainly talk about that. Ran the technology partnerships for Azure for a number of years with semiconductor partners and connectivity and things like that. And then spent 14 years before that at Silicon Valley doing all sorts of interesting smaller companies, startups, mid-sized companies, everything from PC BIOS to embedded Java to handsets and all kinds of other goodies. But yeah, it's been great to see the evolution of this whole space, from embedded systems to IoT to edge compute. And it's kind of a never ending journey of learning to figure out what's going on. And also the combination of this technologies together, creating new opportunities too. So keeps me pretty
I do
busy.
all my learning here. Basically, I take all the info I get from guests like yourself and assimilate it. So tell us about this journey. It's fascinating. In
Yeah.
particular, Microsoft, the trillion-dollar, company that it is now. How's the
Yeah.
company? How did that company evolve over your, long tenure there? What was that journey like?
Yeah, well, when I was a very young kid and got involved in PCs,
Mm.
Microsoft was, I remember Microsoft Flight Simulator and MS-DOS
Oh,
and
it's
those,
classic.
those days, right? So then I went to school. Actually, we were just talking before. I went to Boston University in Boston. I lived there. I worked kind of the Route 128 tech world for a number of years afterward. One day the employer I was working for said, "Hey, we're opening up an office in Santa Clara, free one-way tickets to Silicon Valley." And so I said, maybe it was the wintertime in Boston. And I said, "Sure, I'll take one of those." And I moved out to the Bay Area and worked there for a number of years, as I mentioned, in Silicon Valley. But Microsoft's always been obviously part of the landscape, right, forever.
Mm.
With, of course, Windows first and Office and things like that. But I think what's been interesting to see about Microsoft is kind of the evolution of Azure and hyperscalers and the cloud-based platforms, sort of following that improvement in semiconductors, connectivity,
Mm.
software. It's sort of enabled all these new businesses, and I think Microsoft's taken pretty good advantage of their position over the years in that to build these new businesses. I mean, I think Azure is something like $25 billion a year business, and they're forecasting AI to be 10 billion a year, which is going to rival their Windows business. So when I got involved back in 2005, it was really based on the Windows Phone and the phone platforms that they were building. I was a phone guy from Silicon Valley and got in that door, and
Mm.
yeah, worked on a whole bunch of crazy stuff over the years, including Zune and Kin and Windows Phone and Azure Percept, you name it. Some
That's
winners, some losers. Kind of broke even, I think, at the end of 18 years. Kind of broke
Well,
even.
it's
There's-
interesting. I mean, Microsoft at times is a disruptor. Other
Mhm.
times they're the company that's being disrupted. Now it looks like they're back as a disruptor, which is just phenomenal. It's just amazing to watch. Tell us
Mhm.
about, seeing all that disruption happening over your career. And there's another great wave of disruption happening now, is there not?
Yeah. Well, it's tech has always been the place to take some big swings, right? And I've always enjoyed being in roles where I could take a couple of big swings. And I used to tell people that, I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but there's Reggie Jackson and there's Dave Kingman, right? And there's,
Oh, yeah, sure.
Reggie, one of the great home run hitters of all time. Kingman hit a lot of home runs too, but he probably struck out more. So, you have to figure out, are you a Dave Kingman or are you a Reggie Jackson?
I got an
And
autograph of Reggie Jackson at an elevator in Baltimore once. He played there for a little while, so
yeah, yeah,
I was a fan of his back in the day.
yeah. So
But
it's
yeah,
it's
it's a
important
great
for
great analogy.
the companies need to take big cuts, and I think Microsoft's done that over the years. And sometimes they're home runs, and sometimes they're strikeouts. But I think with the other thing that some of the big tech companies can do is afford to take really big bets, really game changing bets, which I think what Microsoft's been doing with OpenAI, billion-dollar bets, and that's exciting. And hopefully that complements all of the startups out there and everyone in their garage trying to come up with the next big disruption as well. And you know, so we'll see how it plays out. But right now, yeah, Microsoft seems to be ascendant lately with their AI investments. And as a 18-year employee and shareholder, I'm very satisfied with that ascendancy.
Of course, well, you have a vested interest, but it
Literally
is
have
it
a
is
vested interest.
amazing to watch. So let's talk edge computing.
Yeah.
Your sweet spot. Is evolution or revolution? Because you talk to the old
Right.
timers, I guess like
Right.
ourselves. Oh, I was doing this in the '80s. We were doing Internet of Things then, and this is nothing new. And yet we have these new networks and protocols. And
Yeah.
so, what say you, evolution or revolution?
Yeah. No, I think it's just a part of that continuum. We talked about
Mm,
before. Is like as everything sort of the semiconductors, the software, the connectivity, everything gets
mm,
better. It sort of enables new scenarios. And so,
mm.
yeah, way back when we called it embedded systems, and you'd have some headless box running, you know, some stuff, and it was powering some automated locker systems or whatever. Then IoT came along with low power, sensors sending data up into a cloud. I think edge compute actually takes it to the next level, which is now that you have better networks and better semiconductors, you can actually do compute on these edge devices. They're not just dumb sensors sending stuff up to the cloud. And you can actually have two-way communication of the workloads, of the telemetry, of the AI models. And you think of edge really as a continuum of hardware from the hyperscaler cloud to the gateways down to the sensors as one whole orchestrated system. And that's really, to me, what differentiates edge computing from previous generations of IoT and embedded stuff.
Yeah, really, really great point. And
Yeah.
it's even fascinating to watch the big semicos talk about onboard AI, Qualcomm's huge
Hmm.
push to get LLMs everywhere on devices.
Right.
What say you? Where's AI, LLMs? Where's this technology going
Yeah.
to
I mean,
live? Is it going to be everywhere? Yeah.
AI on the edge is hot. I mean, it's been around a little while for a number of years, for like think about vision AI,
Mm,
and license plate recognition and of course facial recognition and things like that. Those have traditionally been pretty close to like running on device. There's also a whole other category called anomaly detection, where the sensor will run an AI model to detect anomalous conditions or sounds that are like breaking glass or gunshot detection or too high of a current draw from a piece of equipment. So that's all running on device edge AI, and that's just getting better and better, right? As the chips get more powerful, there's this thing from ARM called the M85, which is an AI acceleration core, and I think it was Renesas that just introduced a new chip on that, and you can run some pretty serious AI models on these little $5 chips now. And then Qualcomm comes in and says, "Hey, hold my beer." We're going to run an LLM on this thing on a
mm.
Snapdragon, which is pretty impressive. And so now you're talking about generative AI, not just AI vision anomaly detection, but generative AI on edge devices, really designed for smartphones. These are not $5 chips; these are $50 to $100 chips, right? But
Right.
still, it's impressive just to see in the last few years. So fast forward, what kind of compute can happen on the edge. I mean, all kinds of stuff is going to be happening on the edge, and it's just going to depend on cost and latency and scenarios, but it's all going to be possible. It's just a matter of what are the problems you're trying to solve, and where does the workload need to run to really get the job done. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah. Great point. And hand in hand with edge goes 5G, which we as geeks get very excited about and have been. But there have been questions asked about the 5G ROI and the investment that's
Right.
been made. But what say
Yeah.
you? I mean, what
Yeah. Well, it's been a big investment.
boom or bust? I guess is what say you in the big picture in terms. I'm
Well,
perfectly
I kind of,
happy with 5G as a consumer, as a user. I mean,
yeah,
what's better than faster broadband? But there's a perspective. It was oversold, overhyped. What do you think?
yeah. I think it was definitely overhyped. Uh,
Mhm.
a lot of the scenarios around gaming and augmented reality and stuff. I mean, I think they probably went a little too far on that stuff because,
Mhm.
like you said, everyone just loves a faster network. You could have just sold it on faster, and I would have bought it. And so the other thing it does, by the way, is one of the things that not really talked about too much is 5G is a much more efficient way of using existing spectrum, right? So in a world where everyone has, a smartphone and multiple things connected to these networks, and these networks are really over capacity, 5G has come in and helped telcos provide more capacity with the same spectrum using 5G. So not as kind of glamorous and exciting of a story, but the efficiency of it is pretty incredible. Um, but it was kind of oversold with a lot of scenarios that I personally don't think needed to happen. And then the other thing that's been a very slow uptake is the impact of 5G on commercial B2B sort of scenarios. And that has to do probably mostly with cost issues, tariff issues. Some of the millimeter wave rollouts have been slower. Now you have network slicing, which is just getting started. So it's kind of all there, but I think people, they say you overestimate technology in the near term and underestimate it in the long term. I think people kind of overestimated the impact of 5G in the first few years, but I think over the 5 or 10 year period, it'll have a much bigger impact than people think.
And it seems like most things in telecom happen at glacial pace. And it seems
Yeah.
like we're just getting started in a lot of ways with 5G standalone, this idea of a standalone cores that take advantage of the full
Yeah. Well,
set of
there is.
capabilities and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like if you're a telco, you've been running this network 24/7, 365 for like 50 years, right? And you were
Right.
probably owned by the government before that. So you're not really, it's not a culture of disruption and innovation at a telco, right? It's sort of like keep everything running. So when you come in with this new tech, of course, they're going to try to kind of use their existing equipment and do kind of side by side stuff. And over a very long period of time, kind of rip and replace their infrastructure with like standalone and network slicing and things like that. So it just takes a long time for telcos to get there. And then also what's been interesting too, along with 5G, is some of the kind of the low power wide area tech that's been happening with LoRaWAN and NB-IoT and LTE-M and even
Hmm.
MIOTE and WirePass, all these really interesting ways of like connecting things to the cloud over great distances at very low power, um, that are kind of part of that whole kind of 5G story, even though they're not sort of 3GPP standard stuff. And so that's been helping businesses with edge compute too, because now you can connect your sensors and your
Hmm.
equipment, pretty much anywhere. And especially if it's self-powered through solar or whatever, you have these standalone boxes now that can sit out there and, you know, collect information, actually do AI models, send telemetry back to the cloud. And it's really that's really disrupting a lot of traditional industries and transportation, agriculture, retail, et cetera, and so forth. So it's all part of one big story. But yeah, it's been pretty amazing.
It is. What are some of the, talk IoT edge interchangeably? I mean, you mentioned some very practical, utilitarian, industrial kind of use cases,
Yeah.
agriculture and manufacturing and those sort of things.
Hmm.
But a lot of other areas we haven't seen it take off. The smart home is still a bit of a mess.
Yeah.
A lot of the sexy use cases haven't materialized. Is that just more time? We need more interoperability. We need what exactly?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the consumer market, I mean, it's a tough one
Hmm.
because the commercialization of tech in the consumer market, as you know, has to be incredible. Like it has to be so simple. You think about if I can go to Home Depot now and buy a Ring doorbell on the end cap, that's where it needs to get to. and it's very hard for tech to get that good for consumers. Even probably you and I have a bunch of this tech in our homes, and I know that I struggle with it, and I know
Mm.
my spouse struggles with it, and my kids struggle with it, and so it's just hard for as a consumer to really get that tech to work the way you expect it. But if I'm running a railroad or I'm running a factory, I can deploy solutions there, and the commercialization challenges there are different. And so, we are seeing take up in smart ag and rail systems and manufacturing of a lot of these edge solutions now, because it's a much more targeted, deployment for a very specific use case. And you're not trying to make it super easy for people to just kind of buy it at Home Depot and plug it in. Right.
Yeah, totally. I think you almost have to be a prosumer, professional consumer to kind of get some of this stuff working
Yeah, it's
in a
tough.
really unique, interesting way these days. And
Yeah.
you talk a lot about security concerns at the edge. I mean, we had and still have lots of low-hanging fruit there to solve, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 passwords and just a
Oh
bunch
yeah.
of silliness on the devices. But how real, near term, and scary are the security implications of some of these edge
Yeah.
solutions?
Well, we try to, the guidance is to have a zero trust network, right?
Mhm.
And one of the challenges with edge computing is that a lot of these edge devices are headless devices. So there's no specific like UI in them, or it's very difficult to view them. So, I mean, as consumers, we struggle with these passwords and face IDs and all these other things. And I guess it kind of works in an edge deployment scenario. Maybe the stakes are higher because some of this equipment is like interacting with the real world in a security, safety mechanisms. I was talking about trains before, manufacturing things. This is kind of like dangerous stuff. Healthcare. I mean, so the stuff really needs to work and needs to also prevent, aggressive attacks into their network. And these devices, like I said, don't have a UI. So you have to build in, and there's a lot of good work going on with, TPMs and encryption on device, and,
Mm.
deployments and provisioning that exchange keys. And then there's a lot of good cloud-based monitoring software too, to look for anomalous detections and attacks in these deployed systems. But it's security has to be sort of starts from the ground up. So you have to use semiconductors that have good, hardware roots of trust, and cloud-based systems to do the monitor. It has to be thought of holistically. And I'll tell you, I mean, it was a little scary when I was at Microsoft. I worked with a lot of device builders, and it was sort of like, they would build this device and it would do this cool thing, and then at the end they'd be like, "Okay, let's talk about security." It's sort of
Right.
like, okay, probably should have had that discussion first, not at the end,
Yeah.
because you can't just bolt security onto a solution. It has to be built in from the beginning. So I hope that and this is where the Fortune 50, Fortune 500. I mean, everyone's a lot more educated these days as to what to look for and require for solutions. I think in the early days, there was a lot of, I don't know if you've seen this, kind of grassroots IoT kind of edge
Yeah, it
solutions.
was
And
the tinkering, the
yeah,
computer
people would
club
bring stuff
approach.
into the
Yeah.
workplace and connect it up and do stuff, and cameras and thermometers and whatever. And that created havoc, right? Because they
Mm.
were typically unsecured. And we've all heard those stories. But these days, hopefully, I think people are thinking a little more holistically about the security, especially all the new silicon has lots of good roots of trust systems in it. And, should be very doable. There's no excuse not to
Yeah.
have good security these days,
No
frankly.
excuse now for sure. That's a
Yeah.
great mantra. And you're geographically, you're in, ground zero for cloud computing, Bellevue between Azure and Amazon.
AWS, yeah.
Uh,
My
is the
friends.
cloud just synonymous now with edge computing and vice versa, or am I missing? There's a
Yeah, I
difference,
think, I mean,
not a
that's,
distinction.
I would consider edge compute to always have a cloud component.
Okay,
So, now some of them are, sort of only occasionally connected, some
I
systems,
see.
right? Because of the nature of the deployment, think of like, mining and energy and oil and gas and
Mm,
other places where maybe you don't have a constant connection, but you're connected every so often. Um, but inherently it always includes some kind of hyperscaler cloud capability, and that could also be augmented with, multiple clouds. So one of the big trends right now is multi-cloud, right? Where
Right.
I'm running some of my workloads on Azure, and I'm running some on CoreWeave, which are AI workloads, and I'm running some on-prem, for legacy reasons. And, that, adds a little bit more challenge to like orchestrating all these workloads and what runs where. And so your cloud, there is always a cloud involved, but maybe it's not constant connection. And maybe it's not only one cloud, right? People want that flexibility to be able to, I wouldn't say arbitrage, but, put the right workloads on the right clouds at the right time to make sense for the business. So there's always
Yeah.
clouds.
Very, perfectly well said. Um, Now tell us about the work that you do with clients. Beyond being a talking head here on many different shows and podcasts,
Right.
and a thought leader, which is all fun. What's the actual professional service or consulting or
Stuff that I
advisory
do.
work that you
Yeah.
do? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's an interesting evolution. I was talking to a friend of mine actually on the Microsoft campus on Friday. So I only live like a block from the campus. So I tend to
How fun.
wander over there, have lunch and with some folks. And I was, we were saying like the stuff that I'm doing right now is probably wasn't possible like 5 years ago.
Mm.
Now, because of remote work and some of the telemetry and platforms, the publishing platforms, they're all there now to enable me to do this kind of analysis and commentary, but also work with companies. So
Mm.
that's pretty cool. And so it's a little bit of a new area. In fact, I'm on TikTok now as at Excelsior.
Well, that makes me very sad, but I hope
And
it goes well. No,
I,
I'm kidding. I kid.
it's an experiment, and I have about 5,000 followers now, so I don't know. I'm getting a lot of coaching from my
You're
daughter.
catching up
So.
to the average 9-year-old, but yes, that's
Exactly.
a
Yes. Not
perfect.
even.
It's a
But yeah, the work that I do, like the strategy consulting, typically I always say the edge is like a team sport, right? You cannot,
mm,
as a company, kind of go in there by yourself and start solving problems for customers. You have to team up. And, there's device builders and there's connectivity providers and semiconductor, and everyone's sort of, working together for a given solution. I heard somewhere there was a solution. It was like a custom condiment machine. I had someone on my podcast talking about this from like Heinz, and there was like 15 different tech companies involved.
sounds like a Japanese invention. They love
It was like custom mustard or
their
whatever, but whatever.
their
So,
machines.
but typically these companies, like one of the challenges with Edge is like, how do you scale, right? So you have a
Mm.
pretty cool piece of tech, and you've got some sales force and you're doing some direct sales, but it's like, how do I scale this thing? And that's usually where I get brought in to help companies figure out a scale strategy, usually with the C-level folks. So it's like, well, do we need a more strategic semiconductor partnerships? Do we need better kind of go-to-market strategy? Do we need to maybe change the product around a little bit to get more leverage with the ecosystem? I was talking to a client this morning, actually, and they wanted to do more with AWS as a partner and a scale partner, but it turned out like their workloads were all very containerized. They weren't really using a lot of AWS like core services, which would really motivate AWS salespeople to push their solution, right? So sometimes it's like, well, if we want to do something with AWS, we need to do this, this, and this. So that's typically what I'll do, is come in and help them with a technology strategy, go to market sort of tune up and help them scale. And that's really kind of the desired outcome, is to not only ship cool product, but ship it at scale, for high revenue for all the investors. So that's typically my engagement model.
Oh, it's so fun. That's a great mission. Love it. And you still must travel a fair amount, industry events and shows. And I'll
Yeah.
be at CES. Maybe I'll see you there. And Mobile World Congress
Yeah.
are you getting out to the in the real world now after COVID?
Yeah, I'm doing that. I feel like I'm traveling more than I was when I was at Microsoft. I mean, the last year or two at Microsoft, our budgets were really tight on travel, and so I could only occasionally get out. But I actually ran into you at Mobile World Congress in Vegas, which was nice. And
Yes, that's
as you know,
led to this. I probably forgot we
yeah,
bumped into each
it's
other.
great to get from out behind the keyboard, right, and
Indeed.
really interact with people. And get hands on with some of the tech and kind of get that energy. So yeah, I have a pretty good schedule of things. I'll probably be down at CES as well. I got AWS reInvent coming up. We've got,
Oh yeah, just a couple weeks.
NWC in Barcelona. We've got, as no shortage of things. Sort of, I think I need to make sure I don't want to be on a plane 24/7. So I'll go out once or twice a quarter, do something. I'll be in the Bay Area in a couple of weeks. I usually go down there once a month for a few days too. So, but it's good to get out. And, now, fortunately past COVID, being able to interact again with folks. I don't know if you had this experience, but when I interact with people that I had not only seen on, Teams or Zoom, they're always taller or shorter than I thought they were. So it's
I'm surprisingly pleasantly surprised. I meet people in real life and like, wow, you're way more interesting than you were on Zoom. So there's something to three dimensions that
yeah,
you just can't get past. So yes,
exactly.
it was really good seeing you in Las Vegas, and I'll definitely see you at CES. Everything will be on the edge there, every wearable, every device. So it'll be a fun show to
Yeah,
dissect. And maybe we'll do a video there or something.
yeah.
But thanks so much just for the quick chat and the catch up. And thanks everyone for
Good.
watching. Reach out to Pete on LinkedIn, I think Twitter and other places, TikTok, and
TikTok, YouTube,
comment on the
wherever.
videos. Yes, we're everywhere all at once these days. Thanks so much, Pete.
All right. Thanks, Evan.
And thanks everyone for watching. Look forward to your feedback.